Hi, very good afternoon. Just after lunch, I'm Sagar Karan. I look after information security for Fullerton, India, and have worked on a lot of SIEM and security-based evaluation, implementation, and look forward to contributing and getting more from everyone out over here.
Incidentally, I am also after lunch. My name is Avinanda Ghosh. I'm from, I believe I must be one of the few here who's from public sector under Ministry of Finance. I'm from New Delhi. I'm a GM, CIO and CISO in Agriculture Insurance Company of India Limited.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Chitranjan. I am the head IT of Omlar Realtors and Developers Limited in Mumbai.
Hello again. I don't think I need another introduction. I'm Bob Klein. I specialize in machine learning for malware detection, but Blue Vector is a platform, again, that mainly looks for file-based threats. So hoping to help out with part of the discussion.
Hi, I'm Sudeep Das. I am part of the vendor community representing RSA here.
Hi, myself is GB Shaik, AVP Security Practice Controllers Data Centers Limited. And most of the times I was on the Sudeep side. Now I am on the user side. Thank you.
Okay, so I wanted to actually start with a question. How many of you in the audience have implemented SIEM? Okay, so quite a few. That's great. And over here in the panel, we actually got a mix of people who implemented SIEM and few who are in the process of evaluation and few who are contemplating evaluating. So we wanted a mix, and also we have an expert from the technology side as well. So I think this is a great mix. So before we start, our focus is going to be on how to evaluate SIEM technology solution. I would put it in that way because it's not just technology. So how do we evaluate? Now, before we get into the evaluation, can some of us just discuss on very quickly, I mean, we'll not get too deep into the details on which are some of the key success factors and failure factors, because that's which will influence our criteria for evaluation. So we'll start with Sagar, and also we'll go to the audience. And let's be very brief in terms of like, suppose I'm not an SIEM expert, but as an example for say in DLP, data classification is one of the key success factors. So similar to that, if you could just give very brief idea about what are some of the success factors and failure factors.
Right, thank you. Very quick thing. The most important thing, which I believe is know yourself, know your requirement, know your company. That's the most important aspect for going ahead while you're choosing an SIEM solution. Second is divide your portfolio under various heads like your company profile, the target company profile, technology solution, cost, because that plays one of the very important criteria. You don't have all the money in the world to buy the best of products sometimes. Look into it from an innovation edge. Also build some weightage for confidence. And yet another aspect would be people, right? Who is going to deliver? What skill sets do you have?
Great. So that kind of gives some idea about even the classification, the way we evaluate the products or technologies as well. So I have a question. Can some of us share some non-obvious learning? I mean, there are few obvious learning, and obvious learning means like, suppose the vendor needs to have broad expertise in this and this kind of stuff. But a very specific domain kind of non-obvious learning could be like in a domain which I understand a little bit better is say application security scanner. In case of application security scanning tool, if the scanning tool is very fast, it is bad. Okay. Now that's not very intuitive, and the reason why fast is not really the speed, But if you get a result very quickly, it is a bad scanner. So that means the scanner is not able to really crawl it well. A good crawler, in fact, there's no crawler in the world which can crawl everything. So the question is, how quickly can you crawl the most? So that's a very kind of non-obvious thing. So what are some of those non-obvious learning in SIEM? So we'll go through the panel over here, and then we'll also go to the audience and ask about the non-obvious learning, which is very difficult to know unless you have burnt your fingers.
Okay, I'll try and respond to that. See, I think the most non-obvious learning for technology evaluation is actually the most obvious one as well. It is that there is no technology evaluation in isolation. It must be a solution. And the bigger and the more critical component of this entire solution is the people. Throughout the morning session, we've got many examples how big hackings have happened only from password mismanagement. So it doesn't appear, when we talk, even the topic itself, when I read it, I felt that it was a half topic. It was not really, I mean, this wouldn't take us ultimately to the last mile. I'm talking, of course, mostly from the government's perspective. This is one. And another very unobvious learning, as he's saying, very cryptically, is that when we talk of technology evaluation, it is more like which company is giving the technology, what is their experience, what are their installations, what is their success rate, what is that product about, what are the features. But more non-obvious, or the first step there is know yourself, as Sagar had started, briefly touched upon by saying, what is my security need?
Okay,
what is my organization?
Yeah.
The security needs of the defense is not the same as the security need of a bank, and not the same of the security need of let's say, a hotel or a travel agent's operating system. I'll tell you, see, how critical is your information? See, it's how to put it, see, it's like your wife, maybe. The more beautiful she is, the more need of security. So you have to assess it. First, non-obvious, yet the most obvious thing is that.
Wonderful. So let's move on to some other guys as well. So let's go to the audience. Quite a few of you mentioned that you evaluated SIEM. So how many of you feel that SIEM failed to deliver? So all of you feel SIEM delivered. You feel SIEM failed to deliver. You also feel SIEM failed to deliver.
It did fail.
Okay.
Because initially you don't get the benefits so easily. There's a lot of learning, there's a lot of false positives. You need to take them out. You need to exactly know what kind of reports you want. What do you want to correlate with what? Basically the use cases have to be defined. If you don't have that all planned, which was not very clear in our implementation, initially we failed. We are now.
Okay. Just one moment. Are you guys able to hear at the back? Okay. So just the team over here, can we please, whoever speaks, get the microphone? Yeah. Yes, go ahead, please. Yeah, yeah. You're talking about some very important points, so I thought, people shouldn't miss it. Yeah.
Yeah, so hello? Yeah. Am I audible now? Yeah, okay. So as I said, it's a process. You need to understand what are your requirements. Your use cases should be very clear from the beginning. You can't implement it and then start learning. It becomes a very difficult process after that. If you don't know that, what are you going to correlate with? So, and say an AD login failure, what are you trying to correlate that with? An Oracle financial application login failure parallelly? And if suppose there is a AD login failure and there is a no failure in the financial application login, that means it's a threat, it's an issue, right? Because the person wasn't able to log into AD because of some reasons, but he's able to log into the financial application. It means somebody shared the password somewhere and somebody's accessing somebody else's. I'm just talking about simple things which you need to be sure before you implement. So if you don't have a bigger picture on what you want to achieve, your use case is well defined before you implement, you will definitely, you will get the logs. That's not an issue. You'll get all the logs, everything will be there. But the correlation of all the logs which are there is very important.
So suppose if we give you a second chance to do the same project once more, it's like the movie where, I mean, you wake up and you relive the same day. I don't know, I forgot the name of the movie. So you know exactly what's going to happen, so you can plan, and in that movie, this guy obviously wanted to impress the girl, right?
But
huh?
yeah.
Yeah. So if you relive that experience, what will you do differently this time?
The requirements will be clearly set. The use cases will be tested.
So you will define the use cases better, and requirement definition will be the other thing. So another important part which you mentioned is that even though SIEM, I mean, when SIEM came up, it looked like is the silver bullet. I'm going to correlate everything and give you the answer to everything. But as you mentioned during your previous talk, we are not yet there to do that kind of correlation. So finally, there's a lot of false positives. That's what we end up with.
Huge false positives.
Yes. So let's move on to what do you think, like from the technology perspective? I mean, you had been part of TCS as well as you're now part of RSA, so you have been on both the sides. What are the key things which you feel should be important part of evaluating a SIEM solution? So we are going to move on to the critical evaluation criteria. So if we have to define the entire evaluation criteria, it's going to be very tough. So what we'll do is we'll create a list of critical capabilities. So if you can find out top 10, top 15 capabilities that we want to evaluate, I think that will be a good outcome for this discussion. So can you suggest what are the key critical capabilities for SIEM?
Right. So we have been responding to a number of different tenders and RFPs. And so if I add up all of these, the first thing that is missed out, even though that is obviously there, I mean, trying to take back, bring back the first question. What is the most non-obvious and as well as the most critical thing is around sizing? We do all our sizing as events per second. We do our sizing in terms of how many centers from where logs are to be pulled in. And ultimately, what really decides the speed or the performance is how much logs do I actually have at the end of the day. Is it 3 months, 6 months? How long am I going to do the reports? What's the real-time capability in terms of drilling down into the data or running a report which will bring in logs for the last 3 months? The performance is only decided by EPS and the number of devices, whereas the performance of a SIEM solution really is about how do you really manage the data and the rules and the reports that you want to do. I mean, so the use cases are...
How do I define that? Like, if I have to put it into a simple question, like maybe in a crawling algorithm, you can think of what percentage of graph you can cover for this benchmark data kind of thing. So can you define it in a way so that it is measurable?
So yeah, I mean, the way we, again, there's no straight answer to that.
Yeah.
What we have tried to do is, taking from Sagar's, know what you really want. There are two things that I want here in terms of a SOC deployment. One, I want quick answers to what is happening now. And I want reports for my compliances for a long-term perspective. So there is a offline activity and a real-time activity. If I really am in a position to say what I want quickly, have a sizing for the real-time data, and have another sizing done for my offline data for which I can wait maybe a minute or two more, but I cannot wait even for a second when I want to do real-time analysis. So if you break it up, then I believe we'll be in a much better. So events per second, which is purely real-time, break it up into two.
So like, considering that I don't have good background in SIEM, can you frame me in a single line that this is the critical capability which we should be looking for? And I'm going to type it in here.
Real-time analysis and the reporting or the compliance platform. So security incident detection is the real-time, and the compliance management, which was the original idea of SIEM, have all the logs for the last 7 years. That's the compliance part.
I'm sure is not real-time, right? In SIEM.
Within a second, real-time.
Okay, so can you give me an idea that what does real-time mean? Like this, if a SIEM kind of delivers result within this kind of time frame for a data of this size,
Outcome of a real-time analysis is security incidents, that the alerts that should come up, that should be real-time, whereas the reports can come 5 minutes later. Reports are offline. So incident detection is real-time.
Incident detection is real-time.
Real-time.
Okay. And so real-time, I would put it as real-time incident detection. Now, what about the correlation? Now I have a lot of incidents and I just get drowned.
That's real-time. That's security incident, right? So that's correlation is real-time.
So you are saying the correlated result will be real-time?
Yes, absolutely.
Is that feasible today?
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, huh?
It has to be. I mean, there's no other. That's a critical capability.
What I mean to say is that today, I mean, what I realize is that there's just too many false positives and you just don't get it. In reality, even though in theory it should happen, I hear that we don't get it.
You don't want to use it as a tool to just show it to your auditor.
Okay.
In that case, it's okay if you get it later. That's post facto. That somebody, trying to log in.
Okay, because, yeah, another point to just add to it, real-time doesn't mean that I have an alert right now, which is a breach. A breach is a sequence of multiple activities, which might be days. So even if I'm talking about security incident detection in real time, it's actually a correlated event over whatever period of time.
Okay, so like for example, there was an alert which was given by Greece to France regarding one of the terrorists, but they did not take it seriously. That was
the alert part is what I'm talking about, real reply. What am I taking as action is a different issue, which is a people and process issue. That's nothing to do with the tool part of it.
But when I'm building a program, I should have some ways to track all these things, because otherwise what will happen is, a lot of times this happens that we hear this story very often, right? The Mumbai police had got this information, but they did not act on it. I mean, it looks very nice to hear, but the challenge is the Mumbai police got thousands of such kind of information. They acted on 10 or 20, and out of the hundreds which they did not work on, one of them actually turned out to be something that worked out. So how do we really manage that? And is there a way I can put together that problem in form of a critical capability in the SIEM context?
Okay. From a perspective, I answered this question from the perspective of like, why do SIEM fails? Then the success factor comes into the picture. SIEM fails because of non-foresight of the framework architecture. The architecture that we are going to put it as standalone SIEM architectures that we are putting it. Now, the question that, Bikash came out saying that there are 100 incidents which are coming in, one turns out to be the thing which we missed it and then they hit it. So the one, to answer this question is actually MITRE came up with a framework called Cyber Resiliency Engineering Framework. What we call is as a CREF. What actually this CREF is going to do in order to, for you to be more successful on the SIEM front is, it is going to bring in the external threat intelligence. So the SIEM is no more in a SOC operations center. When you implement a SOC operations center, it has to be SOC operations and intelligence center, right? When you follow the CREF architecture, what happens is that around the world, all the trendings, all the threats gets feeded into your detected incidents that get enriched. Once that get enriched, what happens is, in the morning somebody was talking about zero prevention. There is no, it's a kind of, once it gets enriched, right, with the framework. For example, you detected an event is actually, that event is getting enriched by the dark web, by the domain-specific threat feeds which are coming for life insurance or some technology guy, some healthcare guy. Then you become 200% sure that, this is actually impacting your organization. Once it is done, use one of the, auto prevention protocols, threat exchanging protocols which are getting developed like, Sticks, CyberOps, Taxi. Then you have your defense mechanisms like semantics, the firewalls of the world, all the entire forest that you built in your enterprise gets this threat intelligence in zero time, 0 sub-second time, and start preventing it. Once you have this whole cycle getting done, right, properly, once you do this whole cycle getting done, there is no way that, you are going to be, failing in the SIEM. The major architectural framework differentiation where we are missing is, even the SIEM vendors also, they only focus on the piece of, okay, log collection, telemetry, most of the times the DPS part of the world. But where is the enrichment is happening on the compromised incident? Is it why the false positives are more high? Is because of this fact, because it is a standalone incident. It has no global enrichment which is happening to it. So that is where, see, there are two facts here. You defend a known enemy because you know the impact vector, the way in which it is going to come in. If you do not know it is an unknown enemy, then you need to have a collaborative global enrichment expertise that is feeding into your SIM system. The minute it happens, your collaborative effort will be 1000% sure and you get protected.
So can you help me with kind of, can you give me a phrase or just a line so that I can put it in critical capability?
First and foremost is the entire industry statement has to change. It has to be security, operation and threat intelligence center.
Okay, so, so your one thing what you are saying is it's not about the technology, it's about the entire
security is all about your intelligence. If I take you back into the earlier wars that have been fought by the civilization, it is the intelligence that has made the difference of winning or losing the war, right? The standalone technology that you are taking it, more or less 1819 is the technology, right? Platforms are the same, right? So it's only the query results in sub-second, 20 milliseconds it will come, or 1 minute it will come. The archiving, compliance, logs, sizing. Okay, sizing is an important factor. But the framework factor has to be the important. For example, life insurance people. Let them have in their SOIC environment 50 life insurance related specific domain threat feed in real time coming into in their environment. There is an incident that is getting done. Indicator of compromise getting enriched by the global 50 threat feed suppliers gives him the 1000% more protection than a generic SIM solution using the use cases and the correlations, whatever you do. But your global domain expertise is not getting to you, you will fail.
Okay, so I will try to summarize. So one challenge which you guys have to deal with me is that I don't know SIEM. So I realized I messed up with events and incidents once in between. But so for me, if you can make it something very simple, it's going to help. So I'm going to do it for you from what I understood. So if all of you can give it in that way, that's going to help us to create the checklist, or else we'll just end up discussing without any checklist. So if I have understood it right, you are talking about integration, just one moment, integration with threat intelligence feed, yes. And you are also talking about taxi,
CyberOps, taxi,
compatibility
sticks.
with taxi and sticks. Because if I don't have taxi and sticks, I can't do threat intel.
Not only your SIM solution, your endpoint devices, in the sense your protection mechanisms that you are putting it. Once your SIM solution is in a situation of farming it into a sticks format, immediately your anti-bot solution is able to get that in that format and really protect you.
Okay, so I think this is the crux of the story.
Right.
What you mean to say is, we want to check if the SIM solution integrates with intelligence feed,
right?
And do you have taxi and sticks support?
Correct.
Right? So can we do something like this? Can we, I mean, instead of having a discussion, can we frame questions? The reason is we probably have got 10 minutes left. So if you can have 5, 6 such interesting questions which you can frame, that will be interesting. We'll also go to the audience. Let's give the audience
real practical thing.
A chance. Yes, please. We'll start with the lady. Yes, I think it's working, yes. So can you please frame a question?
I'm audible now? Yeah. So I will give a use case scenario. Suppose there's a IT guy or a data center guy who comes to the office every day morning 8 o'clock and does some networking stuff, whatever his job, and by 6 o'clock he goes up, right? And he has been doing this for suppose 6 months. And suppose one day from his system at night, some kind of data is going out, or some kind he's downloading some massive stuff. Right? Now this is some kind of anomaly that is happening in the network. Is the SIM system using some network behavior profiling? That's the critical capability I'm talking about. Network behavior profiling.
So you are talking...
SIM can detect this kind of anomaly using some machine learning techniques by learning the behavior of that system using the logs of the past data.
Okay. So if we put it into a kind of criteria, suppose you are influencing an RFP. Okay. How will you insert it in the RFP? Because you can't speak in an RFP, right? You have to just insert 2 lines. Can you insert that 2 lines in the RFP?
Can I say? In fact, this is exactly something which in our organization it has happened. And now we are doing a new RFP in which we are going to define it. I can't tell you exact words. What has happened was there was
Can you please, I mean, see, we got like just 4 or 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Left. So
basically, the traffic can be graphed. And against that benchmark graph, if at a later stage corresponding time there's a variation in the graph, there is a tool, there are tools which can detect and log those variations for you. So we can insist on a product or a system which will give us those logs.
Okay, can you...
Does the tool support or the
support for
network flows?
You're saying support for net flow, huh? Net flow analysis, huh?
You can also call it behavior profiling. That's also the same system.
Yeah, just one-liners will be great. Yeah.
So I think I'll start with this, whatever is written, real-time monitoring, threat intelligence, behavior profiling, data and user monitoring.
And just one moment. Behavior profiling.
Yes. Data and user monitoring, application monitoring, log management and repositories.
Okay.
Deployment and support easiness of simplicity.
Okay. So I think you...
But you can write down in any detail around these headings.
Yeah, so we actually got a checklist on CISO platform website also. We actually it's a fairly detailed one and it's all one-liners. The only thing is, since I'm not from the domain, I don't understand it. So we actually, it seems like the points which you mentioned are there in this. And you told me quite a few. I couldn't type it. Yeah. Okay, so self-learning capability.
Artificial intelligence like self-learning, user profile behavior, anomaly detection.
Okay, user
That's
profile.
That will take care of this question. A lot of guys are having APIs, REST APIs coming into, poking into the SIEM solution where this kind of behavior, reputation, all that.
Okay. So I have a question related to this. So
I've got just one point that I won't make here. I think it's not working. So when we talk about SIEM, Hello? No, this is not working.
I think it's working.
Is it?
Can you
Okay, so when we talk about SIEM, are we talking, what I'm hearing right now is we're not going to restrict ourselves to logs, right? So SIEM as a word, which is primarily logs, and the only criteria that we talk about is events per second, which is again logs. We want to add net flows, right? And then when net flows is not sufficient, I want to add MB per second when the way Dr. has talked about, right? Look into the actual traffic. So we'll start talking about Mbps then. Then we will add up sticks and taxi on the endpoint part, which analysts are talking about endpoint threat detection. So SIM now wants to add up endpoint, wants to add up network, want to talk about network behavior analysis, which is in the domain of identity management. It's really, as you started off this whole discussion, that SIEM is going a huge transition. It's no more about the traditional SIEM, but what Forrester talks about is SIEM, malware, network analysis and visibility, which brings network flows and queue flows and deflows and traffic, all of them brought in. So we really are not just talking about SIEM anymore. We really expanded the horizon much beyond. So if you talk about critical criteria, the non-obvious thing is that you don't need SIM alone. If you bring up a SIM, you really have done a part of the job.
Okay, I think that's a great point, and we'll come to you. And I'll also come to you. I have a few questions because SIEM, if we look at this as a model, as a computational model, from my computer science background, I try to break everything into a model. So I got data collectors, which collects data. And now I have a lot of data. I want to glean information, which is meaningful for me. These are just two parts. So if I go by that, I should be able to do this seamlessly. So I need to have integration with those kind of entities from where I can collect data. Like, can I collect data from inside Salesforce? Which are the tools which can get the user behavior data from inside Salesforce? I don't know if there are tools you know better, but unless I do that, I can't correlate, because then my cloud and internal thing is, there's a big barrier. So maybe later on, today might be we'll not be able to do this, but if some of you find it interesting, we'd like to embark on this exercise where we break down, we create this model that these are these two major parts, and then technically create something like a mind map that when it comes to detection, I want to see, does it have CASB integration kind of stuff? Okay, does it have threat intel integration? Does it have taxi, this? So we build it into a kind of chart, and when it comes to analysis there, you can come in and say, like, you know what, I want to check whether this kind of supervised, unsupervised learning algorithms are used, or this, because this class of algorithm is better than this, and things like that. So I believe we can't do this today, but it kind of shows that we need to move in that direction. We'll move to the lady who wanted to speak, and then come back to you.
See, we have already covered the technology part, where all the technical aspects which needs to be evaluated for any SIEM evaluation we have put across as a checklist. We have covered the people part of it, where we say that most of the hacks happen in the last year because of the password sharing. What I would like to emphasize over here is the process part of it, and on process I would want to emphasize on two aspects. First of all, like, know your industry. So knowing your industry, first of all, study all the important processes and bring the critical infrastructure regarding which are supporting those processes under the SIEM. Integrate those critical infrastructure in the SIEM. And second, the most important process would be to build a complete incident management response framework. We say that the SIEM fails to deliver. Any product can deliver, it's a dumb tool. We need to provide it the intelligence, and the intelligence is like to have a proper incident management framework around that. Once you have the alerts, once you have the incidents, how effectively you manage the framework around it, how effectively you provide a response to that incident. So that is what I wanted to add on the process part of the complete SIEM evaluation.
Great. So I like the idea philosophically. Very important point. Let's move to Robert. So can you please tell, like, see, SIEM clearly has like two parts. I have to collect data, and then I have to analyze it. Unless I analyze, I can't get information out of it. Now, the question is, everybody will come and say, I got the best AI, I got the best machine learning, and there's no way to really very easily evaluate who is good to what extent. I mean, unless somebody has benchmark. But then benchmarking is also another trick. You can have multiple benchmarking with different vendors being the best in different benchmarking. And it's not, I'm not saying they are wrong. I mean, I believe in research you guys know how to change the data set to change the result, right? So you are perfectly telling the truth. So my question is, from the perspective of machine learning and intelligence, extracting of intelligence, how do I figure out who is good, who is bad?
Yeah, gotcha. Well, I actually going to comment on everything you just said. In terms of a core capability, you know, I've seen many, many different ways of evaluating SIM tools, right, and their expanded frameworks that go around them. And I think a very common one is to basically take the tool, put it in the environment of choice, and see how it performs. And a lot of that is reducing false positives, seeing how long does it take, to your point, to actually bring it down to something manageable. But if you're really thinking about use cases and what exactly you want the tool to do, ideally what you would do is not just test how it does, again, in a your typical environment, but actually have samples to evaluate the efficacy, whether machine learning or otherwise. How would it do against an actual threat? I mean, I've at least been surprised at how rare that is, or if not using homegrown data, relying on the vendor to provide a data source, which is kind of a conflict of interest, right? They'll supply attacks they know they'll prevent, right? So if you really know your use cases and you know the kind of threats that you want, it really, I think, is worth it to set aside some resources. And for larger organizations, you may even have some of your own attacks that you've experienced, whether in the form of PCAP or certain files. Actually use those and evaluate the tool under the kind of threats you expect to see, and see not just what's the false positive rate, which is obvious when you put it in your environment, but what's the false negative rate, right? Which is how well is the tool actually going to catch novel threats or APTs.
So is there some standard industry benchmark data? Like, for example, in anti-spam, there are some, I mean, for researchers, there's a standard set of data, you can use it and benchmark your algorithm or your program.
Right.
So are there some standard industry mechanisms to benchmark SIEM? There's none.
Right.
Huh?
In terms of what's publicly available, I would need to think. Obviously, there are plenty of third parties that provide that service for you, and I know of several, I believe, that are willing to. I can't name them by name, but to share some of the data they've taken from other companies that have authorized release of that data. And so, I mean, short of having to pay for a service like that, it's worth certainly inquiring if there's any free data available that you could do that with. But I definitely encourage, you need to be aware of the kind of things you're looking for your particular use case. And that doesn't just mean, again, APTs versus normal network operations, but maybe even in your particular environment, what about the corner cases, right? Let's say you download a whole bunch of antivirus updates, new Windows updates come out. Talking about machine learning specifically, those things tend to look very suspicious because they're modifying system files and so on. And so, it really helps to think through the corner cases that you're concerned about for, again, what the tool may regard as false positives.
Great. So one interesting thing which I learned from this is that SIM evaluation doesn't seem to be something which we have figured it out. So there's a lot of viewpoints. I think this is a very interesting project to work on. So on the website, CISO platform community, you will find at least 2 evaluation frameworks. So this is one, and there's another which is also there. So this is very much like you can just copy it and roll out a RFP after you modify it in the way you want. There's another which has more like the key learning kind of thing. So we got some data. We also collected the knowledge which we could gather today. So as the next step, this is very important, we wanted to just close this. So I have
one more capability I would like to add.
Yeah.
Is the log compression ratio. Because
log compression ratio.
Redundancy in the logs. Suppose someone accesses a web server, they will be logged in a firewall or corresponding switch, corresponding the network, web gateway or anything. So there is a lot of redundancy in the logs. So if we can remove and normalize the redundancy is removed, then the size of the data which has to be analyzed will be reduced. So performance will increase there.
Okay,
so log
wonderful.
compression ratio is one factor which we should see. Even the size of the data will also be reduced, the analysis data.
Great. So I was about to actually ask something to somebody like you, okay? So that is, we don't want to stop here. We want this discussion to be the beginning, okay? So how do we then, what are the next steps? So we would like some of you to volunteer in terms of making this framework and creating it something, say, next 6 months or so that we can launch it as one of the community goods. As you know, CISO Platform's goal is to create community goods. So by goods, we mean tangible goods and not just have talks and websites and things like that, okay? So going by that, we need some of you to participate in this. So who are the persons who would like to participate? And I know Pritha is here. Pritha, can you please, Pritha is part of the analyst team and the research team. So Pritha, can you just go and take the, just identify who all raises the hand and you just contact them. So who all would like to participate in this? Okay, 2 of you, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, we got 7. Okay. Okay, so here we know. Okay, so Pritha, you might actually miss out identifying them later. Okay. No, that's going to be bad. So can you just note it down? We'll just ask them to tell the names. You just write down the names because you can get the details from the. Yeah. So just write it down on a piece of paper. So can you can send out the email address? And actually, it doesn't work. No, after that. So whatever happens here, that's what works. Okay. So can you just tell the names? Like we start from. What's your name? Avinav. And then my system got this. I will write it down. Avinav, and then who else? Okay. Next person. There's some other people who. Yeah, can you please tell your name?
Your names.
Your name, please? ZIA. Okay, and did we miss somebody else who wanted to volunteer? Ashish. Ashish? Okay. Did we miss anybody else? So what we'll do is, we will get back, we'll get in touch with all of you, group, and in this group we'll collaborate and coordinate and build a framework, and we'll launch it next time. So thanks a lot. I think this had been very interesting, and we are embarking on a more exciting journey. Thank you very much.